Advertising on social or digital, it's not actually cheap. Yes, the barrier to entry is lower compared to traditional advertising. Say you have to book a week in the subway station, MTR station, right? But to actually do it well, it's not cheap. And a lot of times, what we will advise is that don't ever waste money on testing it with inexperienced people or just bad content.
Hi, Darren here. Today on Denzity Lens, we'll be talking to Lucie from Move Partners about advertising when it comes to promoting high-stake products like properties and learning all her tips and tricks for real estate companies to try. Let's dive right in. So Lucie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Darren, for having us today.
I'm actually very excited because I've always wanted to showcase what real estate experts, professionals can learn more about marketing and advertising. It's right now, a lot of people are doing that. So before going into the detail, the tips and tricks, would you mind sharing about, you and Joseph's journey so far?
Of course. Unfortunately, Joseph can't be here today, but I'll introduce a bit of his background first. So he had his entire career in large advertising agencies, pretty much. And whereas myself, I actually first started in property. And then I was doing a startup and focusing on advertising marketing globally, also to mainland China, with two friends where we focus on high-tech products. And then it was, when I actually purely did advertising. And then when we met each other, throughout time, we chatted, we realized that, there's a huge change in the market. And advertising is an extension of business activities. And so as the market shift changes, there's a bunch of underserved companies where their needs is not being met. And which is why we decided to, get together and start this agency to help them propel their digital efforts.
So, I want to know, right? What's the difference between advertising towards a high-stake business versus a FMCG, right? What does that mean again?
So I guess to answer that question, we first need to understand that the decision journey between these two purchases are very different. A lot of the time, FMCG products tends to lean towards emotional buying. A good example.
FMCG means what does it mean? Consumer goods or something like that?
FMCG, it's defined as fast-moving consumer goods.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So for example, maybe the clothes that you're wearing, or the hair gel that you're using today, or the toothbrush that you used this morning. These are FMCG products.
I see.
And I guess a very good example of how they tend to lean towards emotional buying would be Coca-Cola. If you look at all the different advertisements they've been using throughout the years, they associate their products with happiness, and this is a core part of how they position their brand and product. Whereas on the other hand, high-stake products or services, it's a much more thorough and logical decision-making process. A lot of times the customer itself, for them, it's about understanding what their goal is, what the investment they're willing to make, and what are the risks associated with the respective choices. Which means that for the seller, so our customer, it's more about how do they help and communicate these to their customers when they speak to them.
I see. So why high-stake businesses?
One big reason is because of verticalization. So back in the old days, it's the focus for advertising services is more on the large household FMCG names because they have the capacity to produce. Whereas nowadays, if anyone wants to start a business, it's much more easier. The barrier to entry is lower. Not saying it's easy to have a successful business. It's just that there are more opportunities, things are a bit more decentralized, etc. And when this happens, businesses will find their niche. But a lot of times, they might not be the fitting type of company for the conventional large agencies client portfolio.
So what kind of tips do you have for high-stake business like real estate and prop tech?
Well, the first and foremost important thing we always want to share is that it's important that the company itself understands the impact of its product and services. This is not only about whether if it's cheaper or if it's more efficient, etc. It's more about understanding how their product will actually take part in the customer's larger decision or the larger life, the different stakeholders they have. A lot of times, you have to think about the competitors that our clients are facing. How do they differ, and what's the ROI for the customers they're trying to sell to, and then the actual pros and cons. This is like a very fundamental and strategic questions that I think when we share with all our clients, and I think a lot of different companies that sell in high-stake products or services need to think about that before even deciding on the strategy and advertising.
So what's the second tip?
So second tip that we always tell our clients and also is to focus on the content part. A lot of times the high-stake products, they comes with a lot of technicalities, a lot of things that maybe the average customer don't have the time, energy, or interest to understand. It's always about turning these things into something a bit more creative. They might not be the most fun.
So don't be boring then, pretty much.
Yes, we will say that if you have something boring, it's not a bad thing, but know how to make it communicate in a fun and interesting way. People understand what you're saying. Only once they understand what you're talking about will they actually want to dig further. It's like the first day, right? So when you go to a bar and meet a girl, if you didn't really look that great, they wouldn't want to get to know how good you are.
I suppose, yeah, I wouldn't know that.
Exactly. Actually, so speaking of which, I brought two examples here today. I just want to show you how this can potentially be done. So you see these two images we have here. Can you maybe just guess what they're trying to sell? Like, look at the first one with the guy in a suit.
So the guy is trying to, talking about not hiding himself or something like that. Like, he looks like a professional person, worker. Taking off the mask is actually a robbery, right? So I guess it's selling insurance, maybe?
Hint, it's not a FMCG product. It's not that interesting either. But you're on the right track. Pretty much it's to do with the insurance direction, but it's not an insurance.
Oh, really?
Product.
Okay. So maybe insurance are lying to you, robbery, even though they look professional. Am I correct?
Yes and no. Last guess?
I have no idea. Go for it.
So this is actually a company selling the camcord. You see here on the top corner, this is actually them telling them to that their product can unmask the truth.
Oh, that's cool.
CCTV product, not something that we usually want to buy, right?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. How about the second one? This one should be easier. I'm sure you've seen this image.
You mean the window screen?
Exactly.
Window screen.
Guess what they are selling?
Selling windows and computer stuff, technical stuff?
Yes, but what is exactly? Remember, this is not something that the name is quite common, but it's really not something that kind of catches the most people's attention.
Okay.
So it's not windows. It's not that.
Is this security or something? Because I see the man in the middle, right?
Yes, so he's mowing.
In mowing, so lawn mowing business.
Not exactly.
All right, you gotta tell me more.
It's the Northern Systems work.
Okay.
Sounds pretty dry, doesn't it?
No, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're trying to sell.
So Northern System work, this is the advertising, because back in those days, but these are actually pretty old ads. The Northern System work is because this image was actually used, well, I'm not sure about today anymore, but at once upon a time, it was crowned the most seen images by many people, simply because it's the default home screen for Windows PC. And then so what they did is that they incorporate this and then with the mower there to sell their system. Yeah, so these are just examples, how we can use interesting images, everyday things to sell products that, that are technical and, might not be interesting for the everyday consumer.
So Lucie, what's the tip 3 that you have?
The third tip we want to share is that to really focus on media buy and how it should be done. In our line of work, we usually split media buy into 3 different categories: pay media, earned media, and owned media.
What do those, any difference between them?
So pay media, it's purchasing a space to actually show exposure. Some traditional examples would be TV, billboards, or print placements. And whereas owned media is actually the media the company itself has. For example, if you have a blog page or the Denzity YouTube, that's your own media. And earned media, it's actually free organic media exposure that's generated for you without you paying them. So for example, if Joe Lam, for example, reshares your content and we didn't pay him to do that, that's an earned media.
I see. So let's say, because this tip is interesting because something that even I do a lot for Denzity, right? How we utilize the 3 different type of media. Like, would you like consciously to be like, okay, I'm going to do X amount of effort for each evenly, or how would you suggest to people or audiences?
To be very honest with you, that is a very strategic question that depends really on the business itself. There is no universal formula of how it should be split. But what we really want to share about today is that no matter which style media you decide to go for, it's very, very, very important to understand the customer's behavior beyond what the algorithm is doing for you. Because let's just take paid media, for example, because that's the foremost and easiest form of media buy that a lot of clients or different small companies, even large companies nowadays try in the digital and social media world. A lot of times we have to understand that it's just the algorithm doing the job for us at the back end, which is based on labeling and then tagging. This is just the basics, right? So far, all the algorithm is only doing what we're telling them to do. They're executing things based on historical data, but for really successful media buy, it's more about be able to take that and able to associate that with different types of behavior, and will also predict and based on understanding of the customer's intrinsic values. And that's how in the long run we lower the increase the ROI for media buy. Essentially, if we're doing paid media, the money is going to be spent, right? It's paid media, right? But it's about lowering that, and that's how we make media buy more efficient. But of course, this is also usually we say the last step of like a very successful strategy or campaign, is because only when you have good content should you put the money behind it. Otherwise, you'll just see coming back with very, very low ROIs and then high costs, etc.
I see. Just now, like there's one big thing that I realized when doing advertising for real estate companies is that they don't even know they understand their customers that well, right? What kind of suggestions do you have for them when it comes to marketing and advertising towards customers? How did you think about it? And because just now you mentioned that a lot of Coca-Cola, FCMG type of businesses, they own happiness or some emotion, right?
Right.
What are a few things that you suggest real estate companies to focusing on that different than FCMG kind of like businesses?
Yes, for high-stake products and services and for real estate, for example, as well. The first tip is to talk to customers, and the more reason you should do so because it's a high-stake purchase, right? And to understand them. This is I know it sounds quite simple, but what we realize a lot of times when we speak to our clients is that this part you skipped out. We understand, whether it's to do with time or money, it's understandable why a lot of time, people want to go straight into the test and trial. But if possible, we still recommend to do the research first and then really understand them, because a lot of times, customers, they can't tell you the problem, but they can tell you what's going on. And it's, our job or like the marketer's job to actually take this information, decipher, and then communicate them how we can potentially help them solve this problem that they may not even realize or articulate it in a proper sentence.
I see. So what's the second tip you have?
Second is to remember to keep track of everything. Marketing or success advertising, it's always a long-term exercise. And the way, because it's been digitalized, there are a lot of ways to keep track of it. How we like to see is treat it as, a science experiment, right? Design an actual system that with, metrics that the company or we can refer back to, and then try out different advertising methods and see how it all plays together. Because only when we actually know and can control the variables we input, then we will come to a sound conclusion and know what works and what didn't.
I see. So, we talk a lot advertising and marketing, right? And that's a huge topic, right? So, what are some concerns? I think the biggest thing is these concerns about companies have to try to push the boundary of what advertising means. What kind of tips do you have for them?
Well, a few concerns that we often come across is first, a lot of companies or marketers, they're very cautious about proceeding with the new things, which we understand, it's very absolutely normal. And then they're not sure actually how to get to the, the goal, the success, or even, and how to redefine it on the way. And last last but not least is the budget. It's always a concern for many people. And then a lot of times we'll come across you we have to try and communicate to them that advertising on social or digital, it's not actually cheap. Yes, the barrier to entry is lower compared to traditional advertising. Say you have to like book a week in the subway station, MTR station, right? But to actually do it well, it's not cheap. And a lot of times what we will advise is that don't ever waste money on testing it on with inexperienced people or just bad content, because then the money you spend, it's not giving you results that you can actually learn from. Rather like think before you spend your money and spend it on the people with experience. Spend it on things that you can able to track and treat like an experiment.
I see. Because like this is something that I've seen too, right? Because like for our team, we spend a lot of time and money on video creation, marketing, and so on. But it does take a certain experience or even the insight they have to do it proper way.
Right.
And obviously our job is to hopefully lower the barrier entry as well. So I want to say thanks for the tips. And I think that you have a lot of great tips that you can provide anyway. What's the best way for them to, for clients or audiences want to learn more about from you?
Well, thank you again, Darren, for having us. And just to you personally, if you have any question you want to ask us, just drop me a message. And if anyone wants to reach us, they can reach us at the company email, which is info@movepartners.co, or on my personal email, which is lucie.wong @movespartner.co.
Yeah, so I will include everything in the show notes. So thanks again, and then hopefully you can join in again to do another show together.
Yeah, thank you.
As always, you can find everything we mentioned in this episode in the show notes, including our thoughts, more about the guests, and all the tips and tricks. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button like you mean it to get our regular updates.